And now it's time for Pouria. He has spoken here several times, always to great applause and wonderment and depth. He is the founder of In the Footprints of Rumi. He shares his privileges as someone familiar with the language, culture, and religious spiritual background of Rumi to support individuals in understanding what Rumi said and taught, which has been ignored, erased, or misinterpreted through translations and renditions in the West. The question he is asking us, what is the real, ever-present joy, and how can we be in touch with it amid chaos without disassociating from the world or sacrificing this innate birthright to taste joy in this lifetime? I hope you have some answers. Welcome, Pouria.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, the infinitely good, the all-merciful. Rick has already guided us inside, so I'm just going to bring us in before I continue. If you could just close your eyes and just take 2 to 3 deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. There is nothing outside. There's nothing outside in the realm of form that you will miss. And when we, one by one, close the windows of the 5 senses, then we can utilize them to energize the heart and to go in the world of the unseen, which coexists with this world of seen, the visible form. And just bring your attention to your heart center. You can place a hand over your precious heart as you're inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Feeling the bottom of your feet touching this precious earth, knowing that at all times you have the source of being grounded right beneath the soles of your feet, while the mind is everywhere else but here. See if you can feel your heart beat or the pulse of your heart. The most faithful sound and beat and presence in your entire life up to this point and all the way to the grave. A few inches below our noses. So faithful, yet we are so forgetful. And as you're sensing your heart, feeling the warmth being generated between the palm of your hand or hands, which are only an extension of the heart, as you're feeling the warmth, maybe even sensing the light, visualize and sense a beautiful star about a foot on top of your head, above the crown of your head, which is always there. Feel its warmth shining like a sun, about a foot above the crown of your head. It's like a sphere, full of warmth, full of light. And as you're inhaling and exhaling now through the nose, naturally, start to slowly allow this star to descend, coming down, touching the top of your skull. And its light starting to penetrate inside of your head, bringing light to your brain, to your head. And slowly just follow it, descending further down through the spine, through the neck. Bring it all the way and seat it in the middle of your heart. And as you breathe in and out, pay attention to this energy between the star above the head and the light and the warmth that is being this channel going straight into your heart. And breathe it in, and in your heart, everything that passes through your heart, all the blood cells, turn into light. And then they travel to the rest of your body. So start to feel your body, your being as light, warm, full of divine light. Every cell of your body, every bone, every organ is filled with light. And then as you continue to breathe, see if you can just slowly and naturally expand this light to your immediate surrounding. A little bit outside of your body, even all the way to everything and everyone that is in this room. And if you can, even outside of this building, to the neighborhood, to the city, to the state, to these artificial lines called countries, all the way to this beautiful Mother Earth, or even beyond. That it is your light that gives light and reflects back the light that's been given to you to borrow from the divine. And as you are in your heart before opening your eyes, just listen to a quatrain from Rumi. I'm going to read its original followed by the English translation. So just allow it to land in your heart as you are the light that you are. تا در دل من صورت آن رشک پریست، دلشاد چو من در این همه عالم کیست؟ والله که به جز شاد نمیدانم زیست. غم میشنوم ولی نمیدانم چیست. As long as the face of that inviolable angel is in my heart, who is joyous as me in all this universe? I swear I didn't know any life apart from joy. I swear I don't know any life apart from joy. I hear about sorrow, but I don't know what it is. So just blink slowly when you're ready. Just blink your eyes open, allow the light, the colors, the textures to just come in as you keep one eye on the heart and the other eye on this. But the former one is more important, because we're in this gathering not to accumulate more form, more sound, form, more things to see, form. We're here to see that cannot be seen by the two naked eyes and the skull. And because of that, as Rick was explaining, we live in the state that we live in, which as far as my age goes and all of my studies goes, there haven't been any age that hasn't been going through this. So we're not special. We never have been, we never will be. And that's a good thing. So, for those of you who might be a little bit familiar with Rumi, this poem of his might be paradoxical, contradictory even. The guy who's constantly 800 years ago, before neuroscience and Buddhist-inspired psychotherapists have found out that, oh, be with your emotions. He invited us towards pain, not to go get pain, but the inevitableness of pain and suffering, to be with it, feel it, embrace it, so it can be discharged. Things like trauma experts now know, the mystics have known for thousands of years, because they were rooted in the source. So, for those of you who are familiar, it's like, okay, here's a guy who's constantly speaking about pain, speaking about sorrow, but the spiritual kind, which is very different than the material kind. And he's saying that he doesn't even know what sorrow is. All he feels is joy. So it warrants, it begs us to start with maybe discerning joy into the most fundamental two aspects of it, for the sake of our short time together. And the reason I use the word joy instead of happiness, because it's pretty much the same thing, is because years ago I promised myself, I think some friends were around, that this is being video, right? That the next book that comes out with the title Happiness on it, I'm going to kill someone. So sick and tired of that word. So sick and tired of those books. Because I've read them all. And seldom have I find anything sacred or divine. It's the regurgitation of things that can be Googleable. So there is the worldly transient joy, which by its nature, we're always pursuing it, never to attain it. And that's pretty much 90% of the spiritual books talking about joy and happiness. Because what makes money is the kind your ego wants, and they know that. But how can someone write about something that they haven't tasted? So in a way it's perfect, but it's up to you and me to discern. What's in the marketplace, it has no place in the marketplace of the heart. And so there's a worldly joy, which is also referred to mainly in the West as the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of joy. And we can quickly, hopefully, see in this short time that that's the problem. It's not supposed to be a pursuit, whereas in traditional perennial wisdom traditions of the authentic religions and spirituality, which there is no spirituality without a religion, unless it wants to be completely rootless, we see that the opposite of what Rumi is talking about and in this context what's worth talking about, it's more called the true, the permanent, the spiritual joy, which in this sense can be called the attainment of joy, an attainment of happiness, because it's something that is present, it's something that is not linear, it's not something that you gotta sell your car and your house and everything for a weekend workshop for someone to tell you how to breathe again, and how to be compassionate again, and how to be human because you just forgot to be one for a while. It's present. It's present. This is not a time to talk about spiritual materialism and capitalism, but I can't find a time that one can't at least hint at it. In this modern, secular, hedonistic culture that you and I breathe in and live in this context, joy and happiness is not something that can be taken lightly, unless you want to spend your entire life just pursuing it and chasing it. But then again, there's countless other things that the ego is constantly trying to pursue and chase until grave. But for those of us who are tired of that game, regardless of the culture and the generation and the age and all the seemingly things that we identify with because we have forgotten how to identify with the core, so then those things become something to belong to, which then can become very divisive as well, is that it needs to be looked at, not lightly. It needs to be looked at least the same way that we pursue kind of money and fame and the third house and the new Tesla from the sky who wants to take us to hell because Mars has no life, not even a cell in our body, the amount of life that exists in this brilliant, not me, this brilliant manifestation of God doesn't even exist there, but He wants to take us there. At least give a little bit of that goes to the transient, to the real. So the mystics are not asking us to do anything special, to sleep less, to like, oh my God, I gotta work so hard, as if like everything you've done, it wasn't hard. So it's the bluff of the mind that we need to pay attention to. So then there's the pursuit of joy, which is transient and it's impermanent, that you can see, you can never attain it. It always comes and goes, and somebody brings me flowers, and I'm like, I have a great day, and then I watch the news, and then boom, I have a bad day, and I go through all of this cold and hot several times a day. But this is not the way life is supposed to be, regardless of how much you and I have become immune to it. And regardless of what TV and the people reflect back to us, it's not the norm. Let it be norm for others. You have to choose what you want to normalize. And the mystics here say there is a better route to all of this. So the enduring joy, the permanent joy, the birthright, the innate nature, just like how animals, how plants, how flowers, the earth, the mountains, the water, is content. They're not complaining. They're not arguing. So in a way, that is innately in us. So, before we get into the how part of this, is that the great news about this more true joy that is available, that is neither is rooted from nor informed by the transient, it provides at least two great things for us. And that is, the first thing is that it allows us to see life and to see things more clearly as they are. Because in order to be able to be in touch with real joy, the prerequisite is you have to be already seated in your core, in your heart. And you have to be informed from within, not from outside, which changes every other day. It changed several times in your life. Just like, every 13 years, this body is not even the same anymore. Let alone all the cells that have died since last time, a few minutes ago, when we were laughing. When it's seated from there, we see beyond the form. We see what Rumi calls the inner meaning of things. We're not tricked by, nor lured by, nor manipulated by just the form. There are a lot of flowers or even plants more beautiful than this flower, but if you eat it, it will kill you. right? So forms are just forms. There are a lot of people that look certain ways, but you never know who they really are inside. And that can go on and on and on. So, in a way, the spiritual path, as I've said this before here, is a journey of discernment from form to inner meaning, to the essence of things. And that's the difference between, lay people and mystics, because they get to see things a little bit more clearly. So, when we then see things more clearly, it just brings joy in itself. Because when you see something, and you're not going to be manipulated by it, you're not going to be lured by it, it's going to create nothing but contentment in itself. And that discernment is joyous in itself. And the second thing that it does is that should we want to transform the world, should we want to support the world, support the environment, support causes, support my family, support anything, then I'm able to do that at the root level. Not the artificial surface-like fixations and remedy that begets itself, that is borrowed from outside. Because you are in your core, and you see things more clearly, like a divine physician, for anything, you will have a more sustainable answer. And a deeper presence. And a more incredible ability to listen to the longing behind the words. And then you'll know how to bring someone to joy. To taste joy, the real joy, because you've gone through it yourself. So we see things more clearly, we are more joyous, and we stop this vicious cycle by participating in minimizing the collective fakeness of support. And we all, if we were, with a big if, have a moment to really sit in quiet and reflect. We know things are not working. We know our ways are not always working. We know our suggestions are. We have no idea what they are. Most of them are regurgitated or learned in a book somewhere else. And people like Shams, who transformed Rumi's life, always said, "Who are you? What do you know?" And no matter what Rumi said, a scholar with over 10,000 students at the time, Shams wasn't convinced. He said, no, those are your fathers, those are from the Prophet, those are from this, those are from the Quran. What do you know? But then in order for me to know, I have to close down the shop momentarily in the midst of the marketplace to see what's inside. So, how do we do this in this short period of time that I have with you? Because we could just talk about this for hours or weeks. So there are the antidotes to happiness and joy, and then there are some sign points that I would like to leave you with as measurements and compass. So, some of the antidotes to joy and happiness, in addition to fear, doubt, and separation, comes from Althea, who was one of the most influential mystics, died in 1111, before Rumi was even born, about a century before Rumi was born, in his incredible book called Kimya-i Sa'adat, The Alchemy of Happiness. And in that book, in addition to many amazing things, he mentioned some of these antidotes, some of these hindrances. I'm going to go through them very fast, but it's like our weird relationship with food, right? Like gluttony, which then it mirrors back the imbalancedness of our relationship with things. Wrongful speech, that which comes out from the mouth, comes from source. So saying lies and saying things that are not truthful or not being mindful of speech also hinders the purity of the heart where joy resides. Anger. Now, of course, as Rick was saying, we can give an hour lecture on neuroscience of anger and how righteous anger and how the brilliancy of anger and how the message of anger is brilliant. But barely anyone I know is in touch with that anger. It's the anger that they learned from mommy and daddy, from the hundreds and thousands of gunshots and violence that a child sees till the age of 18. Not that kind of anger, which is like base. It's like worse than animals that humans are willing to partake in. So, but the anger that Azali is talking about is the anger that is just eating you out, is making you, is hardening your heart, which makes you the loser. Because it's the most precious thing that needs to be kept soft. Envy, stinginess, and love for wealth, which is again attachment. There's nothing wrong with wealth. Frivolity and love for prestige, love of the world, the attachment to the transient, arrogance, pride, and ostentation versus sincerity. And ostentation currently is really alive. In this context, it's like when you want to do something piety or something sacred, but you want to do it in front of other people to show, which is like one of the biggest chronic diseases that we all live in, and it's called virtual signaling. The entire social media is a platform to exercise virtual signaling. I dare you to go capture one of those individuals and actually check in how much money, time they've spent on charities and the environment and the activisms that they just take a little photo with their outfits and then Ukraine. It's like Ukraine doesn't need your outfit. Sad. Because there's got to be such hardening of the heart and detachment from the most fundamental emotion a human can feel to do something like that. It takes one to know one, because I grew up in war and I am a war child. These things are not funny. So, what are some of the signposts? The signposts are not forgetting the alchemical reciprocity of real prayer. Be careful of the secular, hedonistic, anti-Christian, whatever modernism, that now every time you just want to pray for something, makes fun at it with a meme and says, oh, you're going to just pray? While they're sitting on their butt, just memeing away. No, be careful. There is power in prayer. Of course, prayer, authentically, in every tradition, was never separated from action. But if you hear all of this stuff, anti-prayer stuff, which is very focused, and traditional perennial philosophers have written amazing books on it already in the 20th century, onto the 21st century, it's best to not give up on the alchemical reciprocity that prayer has on your heart and every fiber of your being. Thankfulness is very important. Being in gratitude, because thankfulness not only allows you to be thankful, but shapes your neurons in your brain, in your heart, in your intuition, to be able to even look and see how blessed you are. Short of that, you're just going to create misery and believe that, life is really awful, especially when you turn on the channel and then everybody's doing whatever they're doing these days. It's very easy to be ungratefulness, which in Islam is a sin. And a sin is just a deviation from the center. It's not a bad girl, bad boy, you're going to be called to the principal's office or something. My time is up, but a couple more things. Remembrance. Remembering what? Everything. this breath, this present moment, remembering gratitude, remembering goodness, remembering that you've been freely gifted the most precious thing called life, and every breath and every heartbeat has been granted to you freely while we whine all day long. But there are people who would do anything to have what you and I have, regardless of what state we're in. Fasting of all kinds, from media, from food, from this, from different thinking, and in this context of kind of the Islamic Sufism, contentment is one of the signs of joy, but not just your contentment, because there is a verse in the Quran and there is this prayer, not only for me to be content, but for God to be content with me as well. So there is an actual check and balance here. We're not on your individualistic kind of make-up, put together whatever spirituality or path. There is an actual connection. There's actual teachers. There are friends of the heart around, acting as mirrors to make sure that we are going to get to the destination, destination-less destination. So to end with, Fariduddin Attar, the 12th century Persian mystic, said, "Kedon anta be ma'ni mutaqi Sayyid as kudam shariki." He says, who knows who in reality is reverent towards God? Among us, who is happy and who is wretched? So we don't know, but we do know about ourselves when we check in. And the goal is to find that joy. The goal is to be content, regardless of what outside ups and downs come and go. Our hearts, our life is worth more than that. Rumi lived during an earthly eclipse. There was war all around him. He wasn't a poet to begin with. That's a mistake, because poetry is when someone sits and intentionally composes. They all came through him and others wrote it while he was in the state of ecstasy. But all around him, the Mongols were killing everything. The Crusades just were ending, and the Islamic world was beginning its first wave of amnesia. They were forgetting the essence. So it wasn't like he was laying lavender in tulip fields and with sugar in his cane and a little straw and kind of writing about, an earthly love. So my time is up. There is so much to say, but my prayer and hope is that we be smart enough to not lose life by the noises outside. And in addition to the prayer stuff that is out there, or anything else in the secular world that's been in the works since the 1600s, and we've reached this summit right now, and that's why there's so much suicide and mental health, and like even our architecture, not in this case, even our architecture and our art don't reflect back beauty anymore to us. Sacred art, the sacred talk, the sacred connections are gone. And so just to not lose the sacred by the noises that have always existed and will come and will go. And to also not fall into this polarization or dichotomy that you need to do one before the other or this one before the other. All of that is all made up. For those of us who have done the work, you know that you can be both internal, in the interiority of your being, and be part of the world. But for those people that actually can partake in the transformation and change and changing the world. The world doesn't need more angry, ruthless, floating, momentarily excited and passionate people. We need more grounded people. And both of those can coexist. And the former is nobody's business. You don't need to post it on Instagram. You meditate it for 2 minutes. It's between you and God, you and your source. So no one needs to know about it, let alone try to play those games with you. So I'm not done yet. There's going to be Q&A. So here I'm just going to slowly transition to that for however many minutes we have here. I thank you for your time and attention in listening to this. This is a big thing. It was a burden to go like, oh, okay, well, talk about joy. Because one thing that I've learned is that we mistakenly think that everyone who talks about something or writes a book about something knows it. But in reality, is people write books that they need to hear and give speeches that they need to hear, and they write books that they need to read. So if anyone has any questions right now, I'll hang around afterwards in the common area as well. But anything to spend the next few minutes kind of bringing you in around this joy that is ever present with pretty much everything in life, threatening it, and how to protect it, and how to attain it. No more pursuing. Attain it now.
Can we ask anything?
Yes, and let's have a microphone.
Yeah, she has a microphone. Yes, anything, preferably about what's been shared so far.
Well, you said there can't be spirituality without a religion. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, it's a great question. From my own life, from my own humble experiences, and from all of the studies that I've done in pretty much all the authentic wisdom traditions, religions, and spirituality, is that, let me preface it, in the Quran, it says that there have been 124,000 prophets, all the way to the Prophet Muhammad, which the Muslims believe is the seal of all the prophets. So every mankind, every culture, every nationality, every people have been given the message. And what constitutes religion or the prophet is a divine connection, like a book that is revealed or a message that is revealed through the human. And so when I look at all the spirituality and when I look at all the religions, I cannot see anywhere in history that spirituality, which in reality is the practical essence of religion. Because religion, like for example in Islam, are three things. There is the Shariat, which is the law that we learned like not to, and if it wasn't for that, we would be killing more of one another. Things like we learned from the prophets and from these mystics, women and men, throughout the centuries. The conduct, how to be human. We've been gifted with this image of God, and we've been gifted the prefrontal cortex and so many other things that other creatures do not have, that don't make us special in a way to dominate him. But we've been given the trust on earth, as it says in the Quran. We are the trustees. We have a lot of responsibility to ensure the earth, the environment, the animals, everything is just. And it's the just that we've been given, right? So in that sense, I haven't seen any spirituality, and I've never seen it in any literature all the way to the last 20, 30 years in the West, that there is even this concept that these two are separate and one can coexist without the other. So it's in that context that I believe in that firmly, that spirituality, so Shariat is the law, then you have the Tariqat, which is the path, you have the Haqiqat, which is the truth. So the religion brought in the laws for us to learn, like how to be virtuous. Where do we learn virtue from? Like the modern atheist says, well, I know and I don't need any of that. No, you're eating from the breadcrumbs of Christianity in this country, and you just don't want to admit it because you're filled with hate, not reason. And if you're filled with reason, it's rational reason, not divine reason. And on and on and on. So then you have the path. Every religion gave us a path. And that's where those mystics came into, or became one. Because then, in order to practice those teaching, the more esoteric teaching, outside of just don't kill or be kind to your neighbors, when you practice that, an inner journey begins. And then later we found out, wow, there is this thing, now we call it spirituality. There's an ascent of the soul. There's a refinement of the ego. Pouria moves away from smelling like dung all the way to maybe the fragrance of the roses like the prophets smelled, like physically and literally. And if you've been in the presence of real mystics, you can smell beauty, even with the nose. And then you have the heavy, the third, which is the truth. Right? So then you get to the truth. And you can't, they're all coexist. You cannot have one, like the pseudo-Sufis or the pseudo-spiritualists who just want to be all spiritual, but have no virtue, have no morals, have no ethics. They're not rooted in something perennial. Not ethics and morals learned from church or family or based on fear, but that inner knowing, which then you can find greatly in religion and spiritual texts. I hope that just answers at least where I'm coming from.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, it's an observation. I don't know if it's a question. It might be. But your voice is so melodious and so calming. I found myself kind of in a meditative state, and that alone is a gift for me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
But one other thing.
You didn't fall asleep, did you?
Well, maybe. But that's okay. So, as you were talking, I was reminded when you came here, I think it was 2.5 years ago or so, you had a colleague with you who danced, a woman who danced. And I kept seeing her feet and that wonderful motion.
Yes.
Very disciplined, but yet very, I can't find words for it. That was a vision that I had as you were talking. So that's also a gift, and I don't know if you have any comment about that.
Well, I'm humbled by your observation and your experience. What I can speak to is the whirling. So what you saw, the whirling, is the practice in Islamic Sufism. And that got popularized with Rumi. It existed before Rumi, but Shams taught Rumi many things, including the whirling, static dance, and just get out of your head and be embodied. 800 years ago. So then what Rumi would do, in addition to that, is that when he was uttering the Masnadi as Hossamuddin was writing it down, the 900-page Masnadi, which is one of his 2 big collections of poetry, there was a pole in the room and he would just rotate around it in a state of ecstasy. And then, his son, and then that became a thing all the way to now in Turkey is the #1 capitalistic way of making money is to go see a bunch of whirling dervishes. It's become like a circus. But if we were to put all of that aside and go to the core of it, what you were feeling, the purity, taste of it, is that every cell, every atom, every particle of this universe, let alone the objects and the bodies in this room, is whirling constantly. But it's whirling around and whirling and dancing like a moth around a candle for the beloved, because they haven't forgotten it. It's the human with that choice that forgot. So then to whirl is to just be like every other particle in the universe, whirling around the heart. And what's interesting is that in whirling, people find stillness. Because just like you cannot see the earth whirling right now, the particle whirling, there's a stillness that is created. And furthermore, the word sama, which is the Persian word for the whirling, initially, when it was used, and still initially it means deep hearing, deep listening. Why? Because the mystics used to have their students whirl, and when they would get into that whirling, which outside they were whirling, but inside they were boom, they would then lecture, give the discourse. And then later through history, that act took the name deep listening sound. So, hope that helps. Thank you. We have time for one more. Fight for it.
Is this something, do I need to do anything?
Hi.
Okay. So I've been, maybe all my life, on a healing path. And definitely within the past several years, really focusing in, grounding, and opening to love God, my true self, call it ignorance. And I have found joy in that and radiation, if you, sorry, I'm trying to use the right words, but however, there are moments in my life to where I question of my calmness that I feel. I question if that is potentially bypassing the experiences that are around me. But then I question that with, is that my ego telling me that I need to be in this world and I am not in this world because I am not reacting as I have been told I need to? Or am I just understanding that it is not me, or it is not always important to, I can't quite articulate, and I hope everyone...
Well, I get it. Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay. That's the $1 million question, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you the why and I'll give you the how to the best ability in this moment, because things are not one size fits all. So it's very individually based. So all I can do in this context is give a little bit more of a general answer to that. One of the reasons you're feeling that, historically, it has to do with the fact that in the West, back in the 70s, because people went straight from the 50s to the hippie era, this phenomenon was created in the West here. We need to remember that. Which then people like John Welwood from his teacher coined it as spiritual bypass. Right? So like people thinking like just if they go and dance and smoke and pray and go to this guru, that guru in the 70s, suddenly like all their issues are gone. And that was a phenomenon that didn't exist anywhere else. It was just the makeup of this people here. So they had then about 20 years later to debunk spiritual bypassing, and then when psychotherapists, which was the first kind of field that when boom, we found gold in Buddhism. Let's go bring it because it's Western psychology is pretty like Freud, really. So what happened is that since then, to this point that you and I are speaking, it went so far that in every spiritual gathering, it's become so psychologized. So then, why am I saying that? Is that the doubts that we have are not purely spiritual. They're all filled with psychology terminology. Psychological bypassing? Is it spiritual bypassing? Am I just numbing? Is this my ego? Like all of this jargon that people in the street didn't know, psychotherapists. So then, because of that, the discerning becomes a little bit more difficult. Because you're right, like, is it me dissociating? Or am I really opening up to the dissociation of the world? Is this me numbing myself? Is this me just having a momentary thing and it's my ego? Or is it my depression doing the trick on me and it's my trauma kind of like left behind that column over there? So what happens with the psychological bypassing, which is something I've termed, is that then it creates the never-ending doubt, right? So then the how. This is something that needs real great attention one-on-one with someone for you to figure this out. is too much for one person. And for centuries, we've had shamans and healers and the tribe, the chief of the tribe. And in every culture, there was an elder. Something we don't have as much anymore. As Michael Mead said, we're getting older, but we're not producing much elders. There is no room in the society for teenagers, therefore no rites of passage, and there is no room for people that are getting old. So even if people that are getting older, they're elder, they got nothing to give back, because we don't look at them as fountain of youth is what we're looking at. We keep looking backwards. So it's very important in this time to just find someone decent enough in this context to explore this, because it's very nuanced. Because the journey, I will tell you, I do this with my clients, spiritual coaching and direct a lot. This is $1 million question to bring it back. Is the first step is discernment of the nuances. And then once the person knows that, yeah, okay, this is not my ego, this is not just a doubt, then they can take a deep breath and we can look at it more clearly. But the first whole phase of the work is to get rid of all of this crap. The psychology, too much of it has been turned into our spirituality. Does that help just in this context of generality? Does that help a little bit? Because I completely validate, confirm, and that's why I call it $1 million question, because he or she who thinks of it is blessed. Also, there's the universality of it, because more than any time, this is the last thing I'll say, just like more than any time in history, as far as we know, our air hasn't been this polluted. And I will tell you, like no other time in history has our spirituality been as polluted as it is now. And so I wish for all of us, thank you everyone for your time, because time is the most precious gift you can give to yourself and to anyone, because we don't know how much of it we have left. I want to thank everyone for inviting me, those of you who've thought of me, Sandra and Rick for your beautiful music, and may we all just find the joy that is ever present, that we don't have to chase, but instead maybe take a deep breath, close down the shop, even in the middle of the chaos, and taste it. And the more we taste it, and the more we are in touch with it, that which we pay attention to only grows, because that abides by the laws of existence. And as long as you and I are alive, we can't bypass them. So thank you so much.